Earlier this week, the House and Senate passed a bipartisan housing bill, one of the rare times we've seen members of both parties come together for a common purpose. Problem is President Trump has not signed that bill. One of the members to vote yes on it, and who played a bit of a role in shaping that package, is Congressman Eugene Vindman of Virginia, who's up late with me tonight here on the Final Five. Congressman, thanks for joining us again. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
I want to talk, first of all, about housing, because this has been such a concern for voters, the availability, the affordability of it all. This is a package that passed overwhelmingly. You voted for it. I want to talk about what's in the bill. What difference does it make for people in the 7th District and really throughout Virginia and our viewing area?
Look, I hope it's going to make a huge difference. This is a historic piece of legislation. It's been in the works for some time, but it's the first major piece of legislation in decades. It's bipartisan, bicameral, passed the House and Senate. It has a number of common sense provisions. I was proud to shape some of the aspects of this bill, and we were ready to celebrate the signing of this bill yesterday before the president came in at the last minute after it's been signed by the House and Senate and just literally rolled a hand grenade, and we're back in chaos. I hope ultimately, and I suspect he will fold and he'll sign the bill because, again, it's bipartisan, common sense legislation to improve the stocks of housing. And you asked, what kind of difference it would make for Virginia, for Americans. Northern Virginia, Woodbridge, one of the fastest growing parts of the country last year, is in, there's a housing crisis here, affordable housing crisis. We need relief. A bill like this that would prevent Wall Street from coming in, buying up single family homes, that reduces regulations like my particular aspect of the bill, that reduces the need for environmental review while protecting those critical environmental aspects in areas that have previously been developed, is going to provide relief, much needed relief. And the sooner it's signed, the sooner the president comes to his senses, the better.
You have a district that includes Stafford and Spotsylvania, but there are a lot of rural areas, and that brings this Rural Housing Regulatory Relief Act. This is something that you were passionate about, getting this into the final bill. It did make it into the bill. Plain English, what's changing with that?
Yeah, what it does is areas that have previously been developed in any way. So we're not talking about farmland, we're not talking about forests, but land that had previously been developed, that had already been through a environmental review, does not have to have a duplicative review. You can go ahead and start to build housing. I mean, sounds like it's common sense because it's common sense. It's long overdue. I was proud to be able to include this provision in. It made it into the final bill, even after negotiating with the Senate that didn't have it in the initial package. And here we are on the cusp of having it signed, something that would make a big difference across the country and certainly across Virginia. And we're just waiting for my colleagues to finally govern,
Look, I think people know that for years there have been calls for less regulation when it comes to housing. I mean, a lot of that comes from developers. But when you look at from a homeowner and a home buyer standpoint, what's the difference here between reducing those regulations? When would that transform into more supply? How long would that take to see a difference?
Well, look, I've seen housing in my area go up. I mean, I'm really shocked at how fast some of this housing is going up once the green lights are in. So you think about whether you need zoning approval, and then you need approval from the county for this and that, and then you need environmental review. Before there's even groundbreaking, it's just a very long process. I've talked to developers. I've talked to housing advocates. We're trying to eliminate some of that. And once the green light is given, housing goes up really fast. And so it's about accelerating the housing stocks, about making affordable housing more available, and about building housing in places that have previously had some development, but now are brownfields, so to speak, obviously not polluted in any way, but where you can build housing on and alleviate that burden.
The president wants the SAVE Act passed, voter ID, all of that all those other regulations out there. Why no? Why would Democrats stand in the way of voter ID and voter integrity, for that matter?
Look, the number one thing on voters' minds is affordability, right? And we have a bipartisan, bicameral piece of legislation that is ready to go. And the president is inserting stray voltage that has nothing to do with the affordability agenda that I and my colleagues are focused on. It is a political, he's focused on something political. He's focused on pools. He's focused on arches. He seems to be focused on everything. And the rubber stamp Republicans in Congress seem to be focused on everything other than affordability. And it just doesn't make sense. And for the SAVE Act, it's a solution in search of a problem. We can tackle that, but let's take care of what the American people care about primarily, and that's affordability. And this is a housing bill that will address a portion of that.
Congressman Eugene Vindman will be watching to see what happens with this bill, if it passes or if it gets signed, if it gets vetoed, who knows. We appreciate you joining us here.